Elsie Jensen here. Today we are going to make some homemade sourdough naan with some seared lamb chunks and some roasted veggies, and we're going to make a little tomato dipping sauce for our naan as well. So we're going to have lots of yummy stuff. So let's start by getting our naan ready so that dough has time to hydrate so that it's really malleable and when we go to roll it out. So we are going to start with our discard. Let me grab a cup out here. I'm making a big batch of this because we all love it and everybody wants to have a good piece of our dinner tonight. So I'm going to do kind of a double my normal naan recipe, and I'm going to start with 2 cups of sourdough discard. So I'm going to need a little bit of Jacques and a little bit of Gus Gus. So, but then they'll be perfect and ready to feed up so that we can make some bread. I might, if I remember tonight, I might feed them up tonight so that I can make bread in the morning on there. But that requires me remembering to feed them before I go to bed. So here's the first cup. And then we will add a cup from our other one. So 2 cups. So this can make 8 good size pieces of naan, like full plate size pieces of naan. There we go. And then we're going to add in 180 milliliters of water, which is the same as 6 or 12 tablespoons of water. But I'm always, since I doubled it, it's just easier to use milliliters than it is to try to measure out that many spoons.
Oh, were the kids excited to see that you made cookies?
They were very, very excited. They're almost all gone. Actually, they might be all gone. I don't know if the little boys got to the last of them when I was off at soccer practice, but they were very, very, very happy. They were, as soon as, because they were here, they came in and they were just like little vultures taking all of them. So very happy. They love, love, love Aunt Aggie's. And Evie's very excited for her ones for her birthday. So we're going to do 180 milliliters of water or 12 tablespoons, which is actually like 3/4 of a cup. Just doing all kinds of crazy measurements. And then we're going to do a 1/2 cup of olive oil because we don't use any, we'll use a nice dry but hot skillet to cook them up. So you want a good amount of fat in the base of our naan. And again, this is going to make a lot. And then I don't have yogurt, so I'm going to use sour cream, but we're going to use a cup of sour cream. Typically with naan, you would use yogurt, but sour cream I have found works really well. And if you don't eat plain yogurt, more people typically have sour cream around than yogurt. So give this a good stir. And then we're going to do about a cup of our sour cream. Do a little bit more. That should be good. Now, if you're going to use yogurt, use like a whole milk, full fat yogurt. Don't use a Greek yogurt. Those softer yogurts tend to work a little bit better than the Greek ones. Get there. We're going to mix this up. Then we'll add in our baking powder, baking soda, and salt. And then lastly, our flour, and we'll give it a good knead. And then we're just going to let the dough hydrate. So give it a chance to kind of soak up all of these liquids so that it has a good elasticity when we do go to roll it out. So we'll give this a good mix. Here. Oh, funny thing today. So I get like a call from my daughter's school. And I was from the nurse at the school, which I was like, oh no, I hope everything's okay. It's really ridiculous and silly. But apparently her friend brought fake nails to school and glue. And like, the glue to glue the fake nails on. And she may have gotten her fingers glued together at school. And I was like, This seems like a great learning opportunity that maybe we should not be applying fake nails at school during recess. Still hilarious. It's just like, and it's such an Evie thing. If any child in the world would that, it would be Evie that I would get a school, and call home from the nurse that she's in there because she glued her fingers together applying fake nails on recess. Still, that'll be a story I mentioned at her wedding one day. It's just so funny. But her fingers are good. She got it off. It was a little annoying at first. We're going to do 4 teaspoons of baking powder. Because again, this is a double recipe. I know apparently the nurse is like, we're going to try some soap and some vegetable oil to help get it off. And all I can think about it, I'm like, this is just the weirdest thing ever. And then we're going to do a whole teaspoon of baking soda, which is going to be about the last of my baking soda. Here we go. And then we're going to add in a tablespoon of salt. So I'll do 3 teaspoons and that will get me there. 1, 2, and 3. And we're going to mix this in. Now, the baking powder and the baking soda are going to interact with the discard and the sour cream, which will give us a very, very fluffy batter for our naan, which makes it pillowy, soft, and wonderful. Again, my kids, this is one of their favorite things to have. And in our house, it's a prerequisite that I have hummus. So I do always have hummus in my fridge because they just love eating this with hummus, just as like a side thing. Okay, you can see we've got this nice kind of fluffy base here. It's very pillowy and soft. And now we're going to add in our flour. And we're going to just use regular flour, although you can use bread flour with this. It doesn't really make a difference in it. I just typically use all-purpose because it's a bit cheaper than bread flour. And we are going to use 6 cups because, again, we're making a good amount of naan. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Now, when you mix it up, your naan is going to have a slight tack to it. It's not going to be so sticky that you can't knead with it, but it will have like a little tackiness to it. And that's what you want. You don't want it to be too dry or it will be too dry when you roll it out later. But if it is way too sticky, you can always add in a bit more flour in there. And you just sometimes if when you're scooping up, you might have a pocket in your cup or whatnot, and you might need to add a little bit more. So we're going to mix it. It's going to give us a nice kind of a dry shag look. And then what we'll do is we'll dump this out on the counter, and then we're going to not knead it together and make our little thing. And just let it sit. So that's kind of the most important part is with it is the dough needs at least 10 minutes of sitting time to just hydrate. And that's just so that when we do go to roll it out, it doesn't rip and tear. So you're going to kind of look like you've got a big pile of dry mess here, but trust me, this is what you want. I'm going to add this. There we go. Perfect. And now, looks kind of crazy, but we are going to knead this together. Now, if you wanted to add in any fresh herbs to your naan, which is delicious, like you could mix them in now during this kind of stage. Sometimes, and I feel like last time I made it, we had leftover herby butter from the night before from our making like this, a nice steak butter. And I used that on my like when they were taking them out, and it was so good. Added a little extra pop of flavor. Okay. We're just going to knead these guys together, and they'll come all bit, and then I'll just shape them up into a ball. So you can get a little tackiness right now, but once you get all of these like loose crumbs in there, it will be perfect. And oh, and I'm wearing one of my new aprons that I got. So I finally found where my mystery box was hiding out there. It was in my mailbox all along. But they said it was delivered. And I was like, no way, it's in the mailbox. It doesn't fit it. It was in the mailbox. And I looked for hours. I was like, they must have hid it somewhere. But I got this and I love it. This is actually, so it's actually more of my favorite than the one I picked out. Green is my favorite color. If my house, like, green is everywhere in some room, shade, or form. In every room, my walls are green. I love it. I just absolutely love green. So this is a dark green with like these little navy blue straps, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna wear this one because it's my favorite. It's just something simple. I just love it. Green band. I love green. My first car was green, so it's just one of those things. Give us a good need, but I've got a couple other ones. I got a beige one and I got a navy blue one. And then of course this one I picked out, which was like this floral print.
So you have a couple questions. First, how was your birthday? And then secondly, can you use a stand mixer?
My birthday was wonderful. It was nice, relaxing. I won lots of games of Scrabble. You could definitely use a stand mixer with a dough hook on it, and it works just out. This is a really like easy dough to work with, so it's not a tough dough to knead up. And you just need to knead it for like a minute or two. Now, again, this is a double batch, so normally you would have, about half this for it. But yes, you could use a stand mixer for it, and it would knead up great. I just always find that it doesn't need too much, mixing, and it's not too sticky. Like a lot of times when you work with breads, that dough is a little bit more sticky and they can use it. But I'll leave this right here and we're going to let it hydrate. I'm going to wash my hands and we can start working on the rest of our dinner. Okay. Let's get our potatoes prepped up, chopped up in the oven and roasting. And then we can get our lamb chopped up. So I have a small, it's about a 2.5 pound lamb roast that we're going to cube up and sear off. So sometimes I love to do lamb in a roast. Sometimes I do it in a stew. Sometimes I like to cube it up and saute it. It is a very, very tender meat. My kids really, really love lamb. And I realized because last week we were all done with chicken because that was like the only thing we could get during the ice storm. So I was like, no chicken. Well, I really went gung-ho on lamb this week, apparently. We had lamb chops earlier in the week and I have ground lamb, but I was like, let's cube this up. We'll make a nice little like lamb chunk pocket and they'll be delicious for dinner. I've got just these little baby Dutch potatoes that I'm going to kind of, I will say quarter, but actually eighth them. And then we'll put them on our baking sheet. I'll toss them with a little bit of olive oil, some herbs, and then we're going to roast them up in the oven. And so we'll just have a nice kind of a oven roasted potato, which I haven't done oven roasted potatoes in a while, but I do love a good oven roasted. They're different than fried potatoes. They're just, sometimes they really, really fit with tonight's dinner. And then we'll get our tomatoes stewing, and then we'll get our meat seasoned or cubed up and seasoned. There. And then I also have some peppers and asparagus and onions that I'm deciding, I think we might roast those as well. So lots of different things on the menu. Nice little fresh and yummy, not chicken. Although it's so funny because even though like my husband and I were like, oh, no more chicken for a while, just a little bit. And then Torrin was like, oh, you know what we should have? We should have fried chicken. And I was like, kid, you could eat that every day. And he was like, it would be wonderful every single day. And I was like, we need a little bit more change up in it. Okay, so we got our little baby Dutch potatoes here. Slide this guy out. Let's get our baking sheet here. Get them on, and then we'll pop them in. We'll season them up and pop them in the oven. So nice kind of bigger chunks. That way they'll get a good time. I have my oven preheated to 400 degrees. So they'll roast up for a good amount of while. Get a nice little kind of crispy bake on it. We're going to drizzle with a little bit of olive oil. And then I'm going to sprinkle with some onion powder. This will give a nice kind of savory, but also a little bit of a crispiness to it. We're going to use a little bit of Greek Freak seasoning, which is just kind of like your Italian, you know how you have Italian seasoning brand, and then there's like herbs de Provence. Well, Greek Freak is like a Greek blend of seasonings. Let's get that off that way. So it has a little bit of a kick. It also has some orange peel in it, which gives it a little bit of sweet, but then you have your basic like oregano and basil, a lot of those spices that you find in, Greek food. So good shake around. And then a little bit of garlic salt. Do one more little dashy. And then we're going to just toss these guys up, coat them with our dry herb mix on them. And then we'll spread them out so that they can kind of roast up.
Where did you find the Greek seasoning?
This one, I believe I got it at either Costco or Publix. So it's one of those. You know what? I feel like I got it at Costco for it, but I know you can get it on like Amazon. I feel like you can get everything on Amazon, but it's just a really nice blend. I always like to try different ones, because it's like you can, I have a bunch of spices and seasonings, but sometimes it's nice to have to do a little less thinking about it and just a little more shaking. There we go. And then we'll get these guys in the oven. And then for the last 10 minutes of it, I'm going to grate some fresh Parmesan cheese over them to give them a little cheese crisp on it. But for now, I'm just going to pop them in right here and have them roast up. Okay. I'm going to cube up let's get our tomatoes going first, and then we can get our meat seasoned. I'm going to mince up some onions and some garlic, and we're going to just do a lovely stewed tomato with a fried egg over the top of it to dip our naan in as well.
What's the temperature for how long for the potatoes?
So the potatoes are at 400 degrees, and they're going to cook for about 30 minutes. So they'll be ready right at the end of our prep time and everything like that, maybe a little bit sooner. I didn't leave them super huge, so they should cook up well. Luckily with potatoes, especially with these, you've got a good 5-10 minute window before they've gone too far. So you don't have to worry about, overcooking them too much.
So is your other oven still out of order?
It is still out of order. So we'll know more tomorrow, and hopefully we'll have a good timeline when we'll get the parts in and whatnot on there. So fingers crossed. I'm hoping, I'm really, really hoping that we could get it before Super Bowl Sunday, but I also know that reality is a very, very small reality, unless, they just happen to carry the circuit board, and it's that exact part that's the issue versus another circuit board that could be the issue. So we'll see.
And where do you find the packaged garlic? Where exactly in the store?
So in the store, when you're going and they have those fresh herbs, it's like the section where they have the mushrooms and the fresh herbs and the pre-diced up stuff. In there, they have the bags of it, and that's where I find it. It's going to be in a refrigerated area. So it's not going to be a jar on the shelf, but it is in the refrigerated area in the produce, and it's typically not too far from where all of their other fresh spices are, or their pre-diced up and cut up veggies. It's kind of just tucked right there. At Publix, they've got the bags of the spicy jalapenos, and then next to it is all the pre-chopped tomatoes and onions and everything for the dip. It's kind of where they keep it. And I would say most of the time, grocery stores, Publix keeps their setup the same everywhere. But this one is from Whole Foods, and it's in just the produce aisle on there. for it. So it's just, you'll have to look around, but it's refrigerated. So it's, if you buy garlic, it's always, right next to the onions. They typically have it there, but this is fresh. Okay, we're going to get our onions. I'm not going to use all of these for my tomatoes, but I do want a good amount of them so we can stew them up. So we'll take just a small amount to add some great flavor. I'm going to do a smaller little dice on it so that we have just little teeny bits of onions in there. And then we'll get our meat seasoned up here in just a little bit and kind of cubed up into little chunks that we can sear off. My olive oil. And so I'm going to turn my back burner on, and then I'm going to turn on my skillet here nice and low, but I'm going to let it start to heat up, because that is the thing that can always take the longest when cooking your naan, is if you're waiting for your skillet to heat up. Okay. I'm going to get my onions in, and then we'll let those saute for a minute, and then we'll get our garlic in. And while that is, I'm going to prep up my tomatoes. So I think I'm going to stick with just maybe 2 tomatoes. Have 3 in case I want it. We're just going to dice them up on here. And we'll let them kind of, I'm not doing it too terribly small, kind of a slightly bigger dice, because I like the kind of the chunkier ones for it. But you don't want your skins to be too big. Otherwise, that's kind of like a stringy part to it. So bigger chunks, but not too big. So, and then those can stew up, and then we'll add a little bit of, after we get our onions and our garlic cooking, with those we'll add in some spices, and we'll just have a nice kind of savory tomato basting, and then we're going to add some eggs on them that will kind of fry up at the very end. This is like a very simple, but I love this dish. A lot of times I make this when I'm at my parents' house cooking in their backyard on their little like cooktop. They have a little it's not a black stone, but it's essentially kind of like that. Let's give these guys a little toss. And looking good. While we're waiting, we can get our lamb kind of prepped up. I'll just kind of move this around. We'll have that right there. I'm going to get my cleaver out so that I can cut this a little bit easier. So a cleaver is, if you do a lot of meat prep, this is a great knife to have, because it really does allow you to kind of cut through your meat effortlessly. And I'm going to take off some of this fat because, again, lamb is a fattier meat and this is a roast. So you have a lot of great meat, but you don't want all that fat on there.
Will you be streaming for your Super Bowl party, and will you be doing your chili?
I will be making my chili, and we will stream the cooking up and the prep of everything. But once game time starts, it's game time. No streams there. We are serious about the commercials, guys. We cannot miss the commercials. I stay there for the commercials. I have my team, my football team, but they have never, ever won a Super Bowl. They've made to a couple in like the 50s or 60s, but I'm a Minnesota Viking fan, and they are just perpetually never good. They're good, but they can never pull it off. They have this moment and they're like, they're going to be a great team. And then I don't know what happens. But I'll just say my sports teams, they leave a lot, to desire. We're in Tennessee, so of course, we support the Titans, and they always have their moments too. But I will say my college football teams have done pretty well this past year. I'm a Vanderbilt graduate, so I am a double door. I got my master's and my doctorate at Vanderbilt. So, of course, our Vanderbilt football team did really good this year. And then my undergrad was at Iowa State. And the Cyclones had a decent year. Kind of fell apart at the end, but did good. Okay, let's get these guys cubed up now. We've got most of this fat off. It's fine if there's like a little teeny bit, but it's the big white strips that you don't want on there. So we'll get these guys cubed. And I like to do a good size cube on here because you want a nice meaty chunk. And then we will season it with some of our Greek freak, a little bit of Worcestershire, onion powder, garlic, salt. But some nice good cubes that we can kind of put on our naan. Here. Now with the lamb, it's a very tender meat and we'll sear it up. I like to cook it with a medium rare, which means I want it to have a nice kind of pink inside. So I'm going to, because I'm cutting it small, we'll just sear it off on a high heat. And it won't take very long to cook up. Now, I will do it in batches so that we get a really great sear on it because you never want to just throw all of your meat in the pan at one time and overcrowd it, because what happens is your temperature of your pan goes down. There's not enough surface area. So then your meat just kind of seizes and lets out all of their juices versus getting a really great sear on it.
In your opinion, what does lamb taste like?
So lamb it's a really lovely meat. It's very tender and it has a little bit of a gamey taste, but it's not super strong in there. You definitely get notes of like a red meat for it. I mean, it is a red meat, but like similar to beef, but with just again a little bit more gaminess to it. I find that a great introductory like to lamb is to season it with sage, because sage has a lot of those nice earthy flavors to it that really goes well with the slightly more gaminess of lamb. But I will say my kids love it, so it doesn't bother them. And it's one, a lot of times when you have gamier meat, they're tough. Lamb is not a tough meat at all. It is a very, very tender meat. So it is pretty delicious. Let's get these guys. We're just about done cubing this off. And then I'm going to just take a quick stir over here. We've got our onions in here getting a nice caramelization. I'm just going to turn my pan down just a smidge. And then we'll get, once I'm done chopping this up, I'll wash my hands and we'll get our garlic and then our tomatoes in there. Again, I don't want to do my chunks of meat too big because I want them to sear off and get a nice kind of medium rare in there. And I can do it with that nice fast sear so it doesn't have to cook too long. Here. And we'll get these guys. I will say, I do, if you're, trying to, I love to sub out lamb and like when I make a beef stew, but I'll sub out the beef for lamb. So make a lamb stew. Wonderful, delicious. You can do like a shepherd's pie with lamb. And so there's like a lot of different ways that you can do it. That is not just like either Greek style or a traditional roast. So I think it's really versatile. And I find that it's not that much more expensive than ground like a chuck roast on there. A lot of times I can get it for the same price or better than like a chuck roast.
What's your go-to marinade for lamb?
It really changes what I'm kind of cooking with. I will say go to everything spice. Sage works really, really well with lamb. But I also treat it similar to like a beef stew flavors in there. I'm doing Greek today because Greek food and lamb just work really well together. So that works as well. So we're going to kind of use the Greek freak seasoning on it. There we get this. So we're going to get our garlic in there, and then I'll get my tomatoes in there. So let's let the garlic sizzle up for just a second.
And how many people are you feeding tonight?
So we'll feed just our 7 here, but my plan is to have a little bit extra leftovers for my parents to have as well. So, but my husband says he doubts it. Now, this is one where there might be some naan left over, but they all love this on there. And that's one of those things that I always like hope for, but my parents did pick up the rest of the soup for things. Luckily, the way I cook my meals is my lunch times are more geared towards my parents since I'm not feeding all of my kids, and more adventurous in the soups and more ethnic cuisines. But the dinner times, I gear it a little bit more towards my kids and my husband, which are very much a protein oriented people, and and so it kind of works out well. But sometimes that means if my parents aren't eating dinner with us at night, they don't necessarily get it. So I don't always like to tell them what I'm making for dinner because I don't want to get their hopes up. Because sometimes I will be like, oh, yeah, we have plenty. And then all the kids are like, this is the best thing ever. Or it's like lamb chops on Monday. Even though this time I bought even more lamb chops, my oldest daughter was like, you didn't buy enough lamb chops. And she was like, next time, if you don't have enough for me to have 3 or 4 lamb chops, you shouldn't even serve it. And I'm like, you got 2 really big ones. She's like, but I'm hungry. She's always hungry. It's crazy how somebody so tiny is hungry all the time. Okay, we've drizzled it with a little bit of Worcestershire. The Worcestershire is going to work with the natural fat in the lamb, kind of make it extra juicy and break it apart. Just a nice light drizzle over it because you don't want it to be dripping wet with it. And then we're going to do our onion powder, which is going to give it a nice savory and a kind of a crust on it, but instead of like a breading, it's more like an oniony, delicious crust. We're going to sprinkle it over a good amount, probably use around a tablespoon for all of this. And then we're going to do our Greek freak, and we'll sprinkle it on. There we go. And there we go. Probably about 1.5 teaspoons. And garlic salt. Very important ingredient. Since this is about 2 pounds of meat, we'll do about 2 teaspoons of garlic salt. I find when I'm seasoning up meat, about 1 teaspoon of garlic salt works for it. It's not quite as salty as regular salt. So you want to have a good amount. Let's get these guys tossed. Let them soak for a second. And then once we get kind of pop them out, we'll start searing it off because these will only take like 5 minutes to sear off 2 batches of them. So I don't want to start getting them dropped yet because I like to keep them nice and warm. But they can sit in their flavors and soak it in. Okay.
Can you go over the marinade one more time?
So yes, we drizzled a little bit of Worcestershire sauce over them, and then we added onion powder, garlic salt, and Greek freak seasoning, which is kind of just like a Greek blend. And now we're going to let this kind of just sit and marinate for a second. I'll slide that up there. And let's prep up our veggies that are going to go on our baking sheet. I have kind of we'll do our onions, our peppers, and our asparagus. I don't know why I was about to call them cucumbers. I'm going to do long, skinny pieces of onions. And we're just going to do kind of a roast, an oven roast on there, like a sheet pan roast for these. Mainly because I'm running out of space on my stove. And with the 2 big skillets, it's easier just to do that. And then we'll do again, just like our onions, nice, long, skinny. I find if you cut your peppers from the inside out, they're easier to cut through versus the outside. Now, my rule of thumb when I need to sharpen my knives is when they start to slip on onions, peppers, or tomatoes. And if they start to snag, that's when I know that they're dull and they need a good sharpening. And I will say I sharpen my knives probably every, 2 to 3 weeks. I don't do like a huge thing, just a little, minute, 2 minutes sharpening up. It doesn't take long. My knife set, I've had these for going on almost 17 years. And it came with a honing steel, which kind of looks like a little épée, a little sword. And it makes me feel really cool when I'm doing it. I was always, in my mind, as I'm doing it, I am like one of those master swordsmen, elitely trained, of course. But
definitely don't look like
that. I don't know what you're talking about. I'm pretty sure I look like a samurai sword master. You know what I mean? Pretty awesome when I get out there and use it. The kids are all like, wow. Okay. Get these last there, and then we'll get our asparagus prepped up. And these are so that we can lay them on our naan, kind of like a hero. Essentially, that's just kind of what we're doing in a sense. We've got our seasoned lamb chunks, onions, peppers. I'm going to do asparagus because they'll actually lay nicely inside the naan. And then kind of build it up like a little sandwich. And then our asparagus. With asparagus, I know it might seem wasteful, but you want to do it. You need to cut off a good, at least an inch, sometimes an inch and a half of the bottom. This bottom part of your asparagus is like a stick. It is very fibrous and is not tender, and it will just like get really like fibery when you eat it.
Oh, Brenda, since you get.
Well, thank you, Brenda. We appreciate that. Get these guys out here. And then we'll kind of drizzle them and add a little bit of seasoning as well. So kind of like a sheet pan. Pretty easy. I'm going to break these guys up and mix them so they're kind of tossed up, but I'll keep my asparagus on one side. Luckily, these vegetables all cook pretty evenly in the time that they need, about 10 minutes or so. But you don't want to put them on the same tray as like potatoes or whatnot, because potatoes need a lot longer to cook, which is why they're on a separate one. Okay. I'm going to drizzle with a little bit of olive oil. There we go. Just need about like 1 or so tablespoons. You don't need a whole lot. You don't want them too soaked up or they won't taste as good. We'll do a little bit of onion powder, which really allows the spices to kind of cling on to the veggies. A little bit of garlic salt. And that's all we're going to do. Keep it very simple. Sometimes the simpler, the better. And then I'm just going to roll my asparagus back and forth in that light drizzle. Kind of coat them up. And then we'll give these a nice little toss. There we go. And then I'm going to wash my hands. And let me grab some oven mitts. Now, my alligator ones haven't arrived, but can't wait. We got our cats today. Well, thank you, Larondia. We appreciate it. Okay, I'm going to grab my potatoes out here because we're going to sprinkle some Parmesan cheese on them, and then we'll put them back in there in just a second. But looking gorgeous, looking beautiful. I'm going to pop these vegetables right back into the oven right now. But put them on the top shelf of it. And again, I have it on 400 degrees. And then we'll get these potatoes. I'll put the potatoes underneath them, which will kind of prevent them from a little bit of that direct heat on top so that cheese can melt nicely. And then we're just going to add some freshly grated Parmesan cheese over the top of them. And this will crisp up nicely. Add a little bit of a crunch to the potatoes, which will just go well with those spices. And who doesn't love Parmesan cheese?
Brenda, since you know.
Oh, thank you, Brenda. Appreciate it. See, getting lots of gifts on my day after birthday. That's why I say birthday month. There we go.
What's our family rule with birthdays?
I don't want to talk about our family rule. So we have a rule for birthdays because our kids can get a little jealous here. So if your birthday is not the next birthday to come, you're not allowed to talk about your birthday.
And yours is last.
I don't know. I feel like I should get a little bit more. You know what I mean? Just a little more. We got those. Let me get our potatoes back in here. I almost grabbed those pans without my oven mitts, and that would not be good. I can handle a lot of heat, but not that much. Slide them back in here. There we go. Let's see. Our skillet should be nice and toasty here. So we have it nice. I'm going to turn it down to, ideally, I'll cook my stuff over a 3 on here, 3 or 4 for this. So this is all nice and hydrated, which means we'll give it a good knead, kind of bring it together. And what I mean by hydrated is it's going to have good elasticity to it when you knead it. So it's not going to be like breaking. So just give it a knead for like 30 seconds. And then,
Lead us into a balloon crown.
thank you. See, they appreciate it. They believe that I should be celebrated every day. That's what's important. Okay, we got these. I'm going to break this up, and we are going to do kind of big pieces of naan, which allow us to roll out. But I'll have 8 by the time we're done with it. Let me grab one thing. These are like bull-proofing covers, but they are great to just pop over. Keep them moist and natural, like kind of from drying out. Here we go. So I'm going to shape it into a ball, and then we'll roll it out. And the only reason I do the ball is because I am terrible at rolling out in a straight line. Did I not grab my rolling pin? No, I did not. Okay. Got my little rolling pin, which is actually a fondant roller back in the day when I used to be big into making cakes. But I will say this is the best little rolling pin for naan and like tortillas because it's really small, like short. I've got a couple other rolling pins. I've got a nice hefty metal one, or marble one when I'm like making, pie crusts because you want something with good heft behind it. But for this guy works. We're going to roll them out. You don't have to roll them out as thin as a tortilla. They are going to puff up more. They're thicker, but you don't want to leave them too fat or they take a really long time to cook through. And when I pick him up, he'll shrink back in. So here's our first one. So kind of nice and thing. We're going to put them on our dry skillet, only a dry skillet. Again, we have lots of oil in our batter here or in our dough. And so that is going to give us our, the moisture we need from it. These are our tomatoes that we have stewing. Once they're broken down a little bit more, I'm going to add in some spices and then we will add our eggs on top and we'll fry those eggs up. But they need another minute or so. Okay. Let me check my timing. Let's get our meats searing off here and getting ready because we're getting close to that. I'm going to add in some olive oil for our pan. Looks like I got an onion piece. There we go. We'll let this start to heat up. Once it gets to a nice high, I've got it heating up on a 7. I want the oil hot so that when I drop it in there, it can sear off the meat quickly. That way you get a good kind of crust on it. And it's better that way. Our skillet should be nice and hot, so these should cook up faster. Let me grab a little bit of butter over here because when you take your naan off of your skillet, you're going to rub it with butter. The butter is going to help keep it from drying out and give it a nice bit of moisture on the outside. Otherwise, your top crust can crack when you try to move it. So it keeps the elasticity there. Okay, Still needs a little bit more. Let's season up our tomatoes here. I'm going to add in a little bit of garlic salt here. And then I've got some fresh basil and some fresh oregano that we're going to toss in there as well. And then I'll make a nice kind of little fresh, kind of herby sauce that we'll have for our meat. That's a good bit of basil. Pull it off. We don't want these big sticks, essentially. I've got some oregano. Pull off a couple leaves here. And if you have Greek oregano, even better. Okay. This one, it's got a nice, let's tell that oregano has like a very lemony flavor to it. We're going to just give it a nice thing. I'm going to keep them kind of coarsely chopped because I don't want them too small. I want the nice kind of herbs to blend in well with those tomatoes. So kind of a coarse chop of the fresh herbs. There we go. Clear off my blade. And then we'll mix those in. Let me check this guy. Looking pretty close to it. And we'll kind of cook it over. I always say one side is always more bubbly. The other side is a smoother cook on it. And it's just the way it steams up on it. But they'll be delicious. Okay. Got our tomatoes here. Let me grab my little spoon. I'm going to crack my eggs off in there and let them kind of cook. They take, because they're cooking in the tomato sauce, they take a little bit longer than if you're going to do a fry on your things, but they'll be ready in like 5 or 6 minutes. So we're going to just crack them right over the top of our tomatoes. There we go. And then I've got one more. These are thick eggshells. They are not wanting me to break through them. And there. Let me wash my hands real quick. And then we should be able to drop our first bit of meat in here. And then we'll sprinkle some salt over the top of our eggs in a little bit. But let's get these guys off. There we go. So I'm going to break them apart so that each piece of lamb has a spot on its own to saute for this. This is our lamb roast that we cubed up and we seasoned with onion powder, Worcestershire, garlic salt, and Greek freak seasoning. So it has a lot of great flavor in it. And it will just be popping. Don't overload your pan. Make sure that each piece can kind of saute on its own. That will give you a great sear on it. So if they're crowded, what will happen is you're going to bring the temperature of your pan down and they'll just kind of seize out all of their juices. So we'll do it in 2 batches. So I'll get half in this one and half in the other one. So it's about, I will say about a pound per batch in a 12-inch, frying pan. And these are going to cook up pretty quick. There we go. Let's see. Beautiful. Look at that. So we've got our naan here, and I'm going to rub it with a little bit of room temperature butter, which will allow it to keep its nice flexibility. You want to do it on both sides. There we go. And then we'll just let it sit. Let's get another one rolled out. on here. And they'll cook up pretty. The first one always is kind of the longest, but then they go pretty fast after that. Roll them out. And again, not too thick, but not as thin as a tortilla.
Question. Could you roll them out in advance and have them all ready?
So you can definitely roll them out. The only issue I've had about rolling a bunch of them out in advance is they contract in. So just know that they will shrink in. So if you roll them, I guess, really well and thin and let them contract up a little bit. But I've done it before and then I end up having to re-roll because it takes it. I also like to have the pan have a little bit of extra time to heat up between each one. So it's just a little bit hotter when you drop it on instead of putting it on and then another one on, because when it's on there, it cools down that pan just a little bit. All right, slide these. Take a quick peek at my veggies. Everything's looking good. We're gonna flip these here because if you see, we're starting to get a nice kind of brown ring form up around some of them. That lets us know that we are ready to flip them to the other side. They should have a nice, lovely, beautiful sear on them. Now, again, we like our meat about a medium rare here. So once you flip them over, you don't need to cook them for very long on the other side, and then you'll take them off because these are all going to continue cooking once you remove them from that residual heat. You don't want to overcook them because, again, you don't want them to be too tough on there. It is a very tender meat, so it's one that is very forgiving versus like when you do like a chuck roast and you cook it up. You overcook that, it is much tougher. We'll flip these guys, and then I'll take this batch off and we'll put it on a pan or a bowl, and then we'll get our next batch on. There we go. Cameraman is motioning where he would like the bowl to rest. I'm going to tell him these will be very hot and they need a minute to sit before he tries to snack on them. And again, these are little, so they cook fast. And the resting time will also allow them to continue kind of cooking through. You cook lamb like you would other red meat, so you want to cook it to the doneness that you like. We like a nice medium rare, so we want a little bit of pink inside. Give this a little quick. And that first side takes longer than the second side. The second side, you are essentially just searing it for that nice kind of sear on it, but not to kind of cook it through. There. We got these. So first round is done. I'm going to put our next round on. And then we will get our sauce made up and we will be able to kind of serve up our first round here. Yeah. We've got our eggs cooking there. They're stewing up. You can start to see the whites coming through and cooking on them. Again, nice and slow. They're like stew cooking. Towards the very end, I'll put a lid on, but I don't like to do that until the very, very last part of it to finally get that top kind of layer off. And then we're going to flip our naan here in just a second. Slide this guy over here. Just make sure I have enough space between each one of these pieces. Because again, I don't like to crowd them because if they're crowded, they're not going to get as nice of a sear. Nice. Beautiful. Hop on there. I'm going to turn this up just a smidge. And then we'll let it steam up. The first side of your naan, again, takes a little bit longer than the second side because you're cooking it a little bit more through, and the second one is kind of that final steam up. Let me get a bowl going, and we'll make our little sauce. We're going to just make a little fresh herb, kind of like a creme fraiche with some basil, oregano, green onion, some fresh garlic, cream, and then a little bit of lime juice. And garlic salt. I would normally use lemon juice, But I don't know what happened to all my lemons. I've got lots of limes, but no lemons.
Can you go over what that egg dish is?
So the egg dish is, I believe the name for it is shakshuka, which is a stewed tomato with, and then you crack your eggs over it and you let the eggs kind of cook up to where they have a nice runny yolk in it. So like a fried egg. And it's really great for dipping in your naan or eating it as is. It's like a Turkish or Middle Eastern dish, but so good. Let me turn my pan. There we go. We're going to get this chopped up for our little fresh kind of herb base. I'm going to mince up the basil, which will add a really great kind of fresh flavor to this. And then, there's my garlic. I'm going to add in a couple cloves of fresh garlic. I don't need too much, but 2 good sized cloves. And then we'll be about ready to flip our lamb. And then our veggies should be pretty close. And there we go. Get these guys in there. And then I'll get some green onions, some oregano, some cream, and then we'll squeeze some fresh lime juice over it. Let that kind of curdle the cream. It will thicken it up and then add a little bit of spices. But it's just a really nice kind of fresh herb sauce to put with our naan. Some green onions. You could also use chives. Chives have a more fragrant flavor to them over green onions, but both are lovely. And then do a few leaves of oregano. Not too much because oregano can have a bit more. This is kind of a regular one. I prefer Greek oregano over it. Regular oregano has a bit more of a lemony flavor to it. And since we are using lime, I don't want to go too powerful. So I'm going to do just about a half a teaspoon of fresh oregano. Okay, let's get our meat chunks turned. And we'll get these quick sear off. You can see it's kind of the brown coming up on the sides. So we'll flip them over for a quick sear on the other side. But our belly, the inside of each piece of meat, or the belly of it, should still have a nice kind of pinkish color to it. There. And once you flip them over, once I get all of them flipped over, it's about 30 seconds. And then I'll give it a good toss.
You got lots of comments that you inspire people to cook more and try new recipes.
Oh, I'm glad. That's kind of my goal. You know, when I started this was, you know, lots of people would ask me, oh, could you teach me how to make this meal or that meal? And also my own kids having like videos for them to work. But that's kind of the goal. I just, you know, I feel like cooking is getting, you know, it's kind of a lost art. Everybody used to be able to do it and everybody still can do it. You just takes practice. I think people think because you have all these amazing chefs out there that do go to school and do these things that it's not attainable, but it is. I've never gone to culinary school or anything like that. It's just years of practice, you know, doing it and, you know, and I absolutely love it. Let's get this meat bits in here. And that's why I always say everybody can do this. You know, it might, you might make mistakes and you definitely will. I still make mistakes. But you know, you learn from them every time, you know? Here we go. There. Lovely. So there are our wonderful little meat chunks here. They should have a nice, beautiful, you know, pinkish middle in the middle of them, or pinkish middle in there to kind of bring up those nice little bit of flavors. I'm going to grab a lid for my eggs, kind of do that final top on them.
You get this question a lot. Have you ever considered entering a cooking competition?
You know, I've always thought about that, and I've always, I feel like if the opportunity presented itself and I could do, you know what I mean, and it worked, I think I would try it. Although I have to tell you guys, I am a very, very competitive person. So it will be very interesting. Yeah, I think that's part of being from a large family. We're all very, very, very competitive. Me and my siblings and my kids are competitive. Even like playing Scrabble yesterday, I show no mercy, even against my children. No mercy. I let them have, their phones to look up words and everything like that. And I let them have do-overs. But I did not show mercy when I was playing my words out. There we go. Let's roll this one out. And then we'll finish up our sauce and we can actually get ready to plate up our first round because we can grab our vegetables out of the oven and we'll have that for it. Okay. So let me get this here. Pop this on. Let that cook. Let's drop a little bit of cream in here. Cover up just enough to cover up the herbs. And then I'm going to add my fresh lime juice and some garlic salt. And then I'm going to pull our veggies out and we're going to get ready to plate up. So just juice from half a lime or a lemon if you have it. Lime is going to give you more tart. Lemon will give you more mild, but they work the same way. There we go. Save that. And then a little bit of garlic salt. We're not going to mix it yet. We're going to let that lime juice kind of curdle the cream. Okay, let's get this guy out of the way. My egg.
Are any of your kids picky eaters?
Yes. Just one. Just Evie. She is not just picky. She is like the queen of picky. Although she's also a little bit different because she loves like sushi and some other stuff. But for my food, if it's not salmon or steak or spaghetti and meatballs, she is like, that's what we're having for dinner tonight. And so that is her face too.
You have a question. Did Evie eat your lemons? Is that why they're gone?
I think so, because she loves them. And my other daughter, I thought I had plenty, and I bought so many limes because my other daughter's been really big on making little limeades. And so I've been big on there. We've got our roasted potato with Parmesan cheese. We've got our asparagus. We've got our peppers and onions here. And we're going to build up our little bit of our dish here. See if this needs to be flipped. And then that's actually pretty good. Okay, let me mix up our sauce, and then we'll get our first round served up. So here is where it thickens up when you mix that fresh lime juice in. Do you see how I've got more of like a sour cream texture? So that's your creme fraiche. So it's essentially making a fresh sour cream using the acidity. Okay. Let's get these guys up here. Beautiful. And we're going to serve up. Okay, let me grab some spatulas, some tongs. Get that, and I'll grab a little spoon dish for this, that's one of my favorite dishes. Okay, let's grab our naan here. Beautiful, pillowy, soft, homemade naan made with our sourdough discard. And what I'm going to do is we're going to make a little bit of a sandwich with it, essentially. I'm going to spread my kind of creme fraiche made with basil, oregano, garlic, and green onions. We're going to add on our pan-fried chunks of lamb that we seasoned with our Greek freak sauce on there, and Worcestershire, but it should be cooked to a nice medium rare. And then I have my oven roasted peppers and asparagus here. Kind of build it inside our naan kind of sandwich. So you have this kind of almost like this beautiful little taco here, but it's a naco, a naan taco. And then we have our beautiful oven roasted potatoes that we seasoned with our Greek freak sauce. And then this is our stewed tomatoes with our fried egg on it. Grab a little bit of that base down there, but look, you have that and it pops and you'll be able to dip it in there. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us here. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I try to do live cooking shows every single day, kind of show you what we're making for our family and hopefully teach you guys something along the way. Again, we do upload all of our videos to the link on our page. So if you ever want to recreate any of these recipes at home, you can just go to our page and search for what we made. So our naan with our lamb and our roasted veggies, and you can always watch and cook along with me again. We also have a link to our Amazon storefront that has all of our different cooking gear and gadgets in it, like my pans, my bakeware, my hex cloth, all the different things I use in the kitchen for you guys to check out. But again, thank you so much for joining us here. Don't forget to like and subscribe.